Okay.
There is no pain. What is it? No gain without pain.
Yes. This is for me
I
has been
see.
testament for it.
I see why you've done so well, Harleen. You don't give up.
No, but I can't give up, right? I mean, the line of work that I am in, I'm fighting for my clients. I'm fighting for people like you, right? Who've been through so much. So I can't give up. I mean, I can't give up on them for sure. But this is too much. Today has been, it's been crazy. Last 2 hours. But thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sticking it with me. Good for you.
I think, as they say, Harleen, when you've been through a lot, this is just, it's like water off a duck's back.
Yeah, doesn't it? I think that's what it is. And I think you and me have both become really resilient and determined in life.
I think
which is
you're
why
a
we
little
did.
more determined than I am, but yeah, I'm not giving up.
That's okay. I won't give up. As long as you're with me, we're not going to give up. Don't worry. Okay, so let's begin. Let's just do this, right? I mean, we are we are an hour late.
Yeah.
To our own time, but we are live nonetheless. So let's get this done. Susie, welcome again. I'm going to do it officially again. Welcome to our inspiration series in the month of April. And today I look forward to presenting you to my audience, and I'm excited to have them hear your story. So where do we begin?
Probably, I think, unforgiveness, harbouring unforgiveness, which,
Okay.
yeah, that...
Is you feel is the essence of all your trauma. The essence of it all came from unforgiveness. The pain, the demons that you're fighting with even today came from unforgiveness.
So I'm not fighting any of that. I've overcome. I am an overcomer and I am a survivor. So that has gone. Yeah, that's gone. So that's what my story is about, is overcoming. And
exactly.
And knowing that where there is, if you have a vision and you can face fear, then anything is possible. So I just had to face the things that were haunting me that I didn't know that was there. As I said before, Harleen, you don't know what you don't know. And life sends us messages, and it has to become painful enough for us to change. So that was the turning point. That was pivotal for me. My pain was great. And that's when I turned the corner, and my regret was my defining moment.
It's so simply put, but then there is so much backstory to it, right?
Correct.
That my regret was my defining moment, but then there is so much weight, so much anchored to that word regret. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start from your childhood, right? How did it all start? How did the word of unforgiveness start for you?
So I am one of 10. I'm the youngest of 10. So there was a history that of information that was filtered down to me when I started becoming aware of what was going on between my mother and father. And my first experience of trauma, I think you could say, was watching my mother. She just had a hysterectomy, and my father was standing over my mother with a belt, and she had bloodied, ruptured stitches, and he was screaming abuse at her. I can't recall what that was about, but I was traumatized. I was scurried away by family, and then through that process of watching my father just drinking his life away and verbally abusive towards my mother. So from that, and I felt that he was just a waste of space, and I watched my mother in a loveless marriage, and yes, that's where the grief, because there are different layers of grief. Grief was not having a father that was there. He was there physically, but he wasn't there emotionally. So, and then watching my school friends and their families and the interaction, that just drove the knife in deeper, I believe. And so that's where it started from.
So talk to me more. Why do you think your mom decided to stay with him?
Okay, so my mother had an unfortunate background as well. She was rejected by her mother, and her life became, so she had no one really. She had sisters that had passed away, and the one sister that she had was she wasn't a nice person. And my mother had 10 children because I believe she was just trying to, that was her comfort zone, a belonging. And so she stayed in that marriage because she was a migrant. She didn't have a command of the English language, and she relied on my father. Yeah.
So how much of their relationship and her dependency on her husband, on the male figure, actually impact and influence you about your beliefs?
I didn't know at the time, but so there are 6 girls and 4 boys. All of the girls have married into dysfunctional relationships, and all the boys went the opposite way and became wonderful men. So I'm sorry, Harleen, just give me that question again. How did that affect me?
Yes, how did that affect your belief development, right? Because you saw your mom going back to the man despite the way he treated her. And that, I'm sure, impacted you at some level. So I'm trying to understand why and how it did.
So I didn't see the impact of that until many years after. So my mother did everything to try to set the example in terms of she would speak to me about, and she gave me a choice. She said, Susie, this is the education I'm giving you. You don't have to live this life. You can make it better for yourself. But what I've learned is that children, I'm getting emotional.
That's okay. That was the whole idea. I wanted you to empty your cup and share with us that belief.
I'm getting emotional because I can see that my son has just tuned in. And my son, yes. So my mother said, don't do what I've done. She said, go and make good of your life. So I did that. I was given a private education. I was in the fashion industry. I had a good lifestyle. So I didn't really know what was waiting for me. And it was only, I can only say that I had wonderful relationships, Harleen. But I think that when we have unprocessed grief and anger, that just wells to the surface eventually. And my words came to bear fruit. So however it occurred, I married my children's father because it was what I was familiar with, and I didn't realise that was the factor that would control my decision. I had no idea what lay beneath my resentment and my pain. I had no idea. It's almost like we have this sign above our head, and we don't realise that we are giving out a certain energy in the world, and whatever it is that lies beneath, that's what we attract in our life. So
very true.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, but then I'm curious, right? That what was more? Was it resentment to your dad, the fact that he did not love your mother, or was it that he could not ever be the father that you wanted him to be because you saw your friends have perhaps a good relationship with their dads, right? And that made you feel a sense of hollowness or an emptiness because there is comparison and then you miss it more. So what is it that you resented more? Did you resent him not being there for you, or did you not resent him not being there for his wife?
All of the above.
All of the above? Were you able to process it?
His treatment.
Because you're very young.
His mistreatment. I'm sorry, what was that? There's a delay.
Oh no, I said you were very young. Were you actually able to process the fact that he was not being uh, emotionally supportive to your mother?
I knew that something wasn't right. As a
Or you did
child,
how?
it's very difficult to process things, but there's something that in our inner being that says there's something wrong here.
Correct. And how old were you when this happened?
Um, I became aware of it when I was about 8. That's when my mother had me when she was 42. And I became aware of that when I saw my father's behaviour towards my mother. That was probably the first time that I experienced that. Before that, I was protected, or I was too young, or I just didn't see it. Any one of the above.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. So talk to me about the second thing that you brought about your dad, which is alcohol abuse. Did that affect you? I mean, what are your thoughts about alcohol when you were growing up, and what are your thoughts right now?
I'm not opposed to alcohol. Everything in good measure. It's when
Okay.
it
All right.
becomes, yeah. So when it rocks that balance, that's when it becomes unacceptable. Yeah. But in retrospect, and what I've learned, Harleen, is my father was probably masking, because any type of an addiction, you're masking pain. And back then in that generation, they didn't process. They didn't speak about things. They couldn't process it. And even as a parent now, myself, and in the world of technology that we have all of this education at our disposal, we still make mistakes. So we have to make allowances for our parents from the previous generation that didn't understand. They didn't know what they didn't know. So that is where forgiveness is important, and to understand that they have their love language and we have to lean into that. I believe that wherever there isn't any physical or emotional abuse that's intentional, then we have to make allowances. And that's not setting ourselves up for abuse, but learning to forgive, because that unforgiveness has a great bearing on our trajectory.
True that. No, I totally can understand what you're saying. But what I want to ask, if you could go back, right? If you could, for some magical reason, actually go back in time, what would be that one thing that you would change that you think, maybe triggered multiple other events? I mean, what would you tell your dad? Something that you had control over. Would you sit him down and explain to him? Would you tell your mom something? I mean, what is it that you could do to change?
Most definitely. And look, in retrospect, we're always that much wiser. I
True.
would.
Always.
I've often reflected on that, and I would just learn to be with what is. It's learning, understanding not to try and control the situation, but to be with that and to meet people on their level. If only I had met my father at his level, and sat with him and just listened to him and asked him questions about, Dad, what makes you tick? Why do you think you need to drink alcohol? Why are you angry? And just connect with him so that he had the freedom to be able to speak rather than hide behind the alcohol consumption.
So what about your siblings? Excuse me, I'm sorry, my throat's really gone. But then if you're one among the 10, did your siblings not try and mediate and help you bridge the bond? Did they not have a good bond with your father?
No, unfortunately not. My father had beaten some of my older siblings, and they were always in support of Mum. He was just a fixture. So it didn't go down. They didn't have a good experience of him, unfortunately, but he was always around, and Mum always insisted that we still respect him because he is our father. So the boys fell in line, the girls fell in line. They galvanised, with Mum to help her to get her through things, because she was so supportive of all of us. But again, we can try to teach our children, but they will always follow in the footsteps that we set out for them. Yeah, or those footsteps we try to conceal. So, yeah.
True.
Yeah.
So what happened after that? Because I do want to get your entire story, and I know we are short of time. So let's try and hurry that up. So what happened after that? So what about the person that you attracted, marriage? When
So, yeah, from the age of 18 to 29, I had a wonderful life. You know, I went through, unencumbered by anything and had a good life and had some wonderful relationships. And the irony of how life works, Harleen, it really is ironic. I came back to Perth. I'd lived in Sydney for about 10 years. I was in the fashion industry. And I came back because I was a little disillusioned by the industry because of the values and the morals that went against how I was raised. So I came back to ponder life. So I went back home, and I was 29 and started to worry that maybe, you know, I was getting older and I didn't know what I was doing, where I was going. And so all of my defences were down, and I happened to meet my husband at a time when I wasn't certain about life. And again, it must have been that sign over my head, you know, abusers this way. So I married him. I became pregnant, and I thought that I had to marry. I thought I was turning 30, so I thought that I had to marry. So that was the beginning of 10 years of domestic violence. Yeah. So when I was 8 months pregnant, I was forced to my knees to wash a shower curtain. And I remember looking up and thinking, wow, wow, what have I reduced myself to? But all along, I believed in giving people the opportunity. So this is a cycle of domestic violence. You live for the honeymoon stage, and I must say he was very charming, quick-witted, intelligent, and said all the things that I wanted to hear. So I get that is a certain personality trait in certain people. And I didn't know. I was quite naive. Even with all of my years out there in the world, I was still naive about relationships because my understanding of relationships was based on what I saw with my mother and father. But
exactly. That's exactly what I will tell you. Your belief development came from what you saw, from observation. And what you observed was exactly what was happening to you, which was your definition of normal, right? But so how did it change? I mean, who brought that to your attention, that what is happening to you is not normal? Do you not have a good relationship with your siblings?
I had a very good relationship with my siblings. I was in and out of a marriage every 18 months. And I knew in my heart of hearts that it wasn't right because I was always rallying against the way that I was being treated. But for me, I couldn't see past the fact that, because I didn't have that, I was driven by the fact, Harleen, that I didn't have it in my childhood, and I was determined. First of all, my mother had seen the warning signs, and I rallied against that and thought, no, I will prove my mother wrong. I will prove that I have not made a mistake. And because I was pregnant, I didn't want my child to be without a father. So all of this was in the background. And I knew that it was wrong because of my relationships in the past were wonderful. But I was living in the honeymoon stages. So that is another cycle of domestic violence. I was hell-bent to prove that my mother was wrong, that I hadn't made a mistake. I wanted a father for my child. And so I started to reason why and accept certain behaviour because I was reasoning it away as to why this was happening. So as the goalpost changed, so did I change with it. And I still forced it to happen. And that's one thing that I've learned is when things aren't working, there is a reason for it. Some things, not technology, but when it comes to relationships.
Yeah. I know. We have that shared trauma of technology. That will bond us for the rest of our life.
Oh my God. We beat it. We did it, darling.
What's that?
Yeah. I said, we did it. We beat it.
Yeah, we beat it. There you
We
go,
did
women
it.
power. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, coming back, you beat the odds too, at
I
least
did.
with the relationship. Yeah, you're right. So, and I'm sure the journey was very tough. But I think we're just at the tip of the iceberg when it comes to your husband, right? So when did it all stop? I mean, what triggered you? When was it too much, and how did it stop?
When I saw the competition between a father and a 1-year-old son, that was an impasse for me. Yeah. So there were I had many situations where I would leave and then I would come back because I wanted to make it work. And believing that people can change, another lesson that I've learned, people are who they are. They will show you who they are. You just need to listen. And if you don't listen, then you will continue. So that was my, both father and son have a birthday 5 days apart. And I was preparing for my son's birthday, but I had also on the side prepared for the father's birthday as a surprise for him. So that was all dealt with. And then I said to the father, I would like us to celebrate our son's first birthday. And he said, so you've prepared something for the son, but you haven't for me. And at that time, it was like somebody had just punched me because I sort of thought, my God, I don't believe what I've just heard. You're in competition with your son. And so this went into a whole week of being interrogated by the master of interrogation. A whole week I went through it to explain myself, to say that I had prepared. I had to break the surprise and say, look, I have prepared this for you. I want it as a surprise, but that wasn't enough. So the interrogation and the abuse went on for a whole week. So his birthday came and went, and during that time I was berated and told that I'm just nothing but an old hag, and that I really had no intention of giving him a birthday. So it was that, but coupled with the fact that I thought, Harleem, if a father is going to be in competition with their child that is only 1 year old, then that is an impasse for me. I have to leave. Enough is enough. And also, I realised that my daughter was getting older, and both boys. I thought, I have to be the one that has to lead here. Those children didn't ask to be born on this earth.
It's okay. I'm sorry. It's okay. I'm glad you're sharing your story. That's the whole idea, right? To get you to share your story. Because the fact that you're even crying right now, it means the pain is right there. It's still not out of.
It's more the gee, I didn't expect this to come up, but anyway, it is a memory. It's memory. It's not pain anymore, Harleem. I have done the work on myself. I've done transformational education. I've educated myself so that I would never make that mistake again, and I did it for my children. My pain is, I guess you can say, is that sadness for my children, that I wish I had protected them against that. And mother's pain is deep.
Don't do that
Pardon?
to yourself.
No,
I said, don't do that to yourself. Yeah.
This is not about punishing myself. I understand all that. It is a little bit like when you've had an injury. There's always a limp there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's not about reducing myself to anything more. I have forgiven myself.
Sure.
So yeah, it's about mother and being responsible.
Good, good. And like you said, right, the biggest lesson here is for the audience, especially when they listen to this later on, is that when you're with someone, right, the biggest mistake we do is, out of our love for that person, out of our own optimism, we forgive them, or we are accepting of their nuances, right? But then we what we really need to pay attention to is, if the desire to change is not greater than the desire to stay the same, the person won't change. So we
Correct.
can keep fooling ourselves, oh, the man will change, the man will change, or the woman will change, because we want the change. But the point is that the person want the change. And if you don't see signs of that person even accepting that the person is wrong, forget the change. I mean, there is no acceptance of that person being wrong itself. I mean, the change is still far away, right? And I think that, for me, is the biggest lesson here when dealing with people that are toxic, when dealing with people that are not sending the right vibe and energy for you and are not right for you, right? When you see them not being sensitive to your needs, when you see them not being approving of what you're doing, when you see them being condescending towards you for most of their time, you know there's a problem, right? We should not get fooled by the honeymoon period, like you said, the honeymoon personality of a person.
Correct. And
I think that is something we do to ourselves.
yeah, well, that comes down to understanding and educating yourself in that. And I didn't know what I didn't know, as I said, Helen. And
Right.
you want to see good in people, and I had made a commitment, and then I realised the other thing that kept me in the marriage for a while is because I saw that this man's happiness was reliant on our relationship, and if things weren't going well, then he would target his children or he would neglect his children. So I stayed in the marriage because I knew that the moment that I left the marriage, he would target his children, and so it came to fruition. So then outside of the 10 years, it was 10-year battle in and out of courts trying to protect my children, where they became the pawn and they were violated because they weren't forthcoming with information regarding myself. And so trying to go through the judicial system where they ignored that and just saw that we were two warring parties that would dissolve once we were apart. But they never saw that there was a difference between a well-meaning father and somebody who's going to use their children as a pawn. And unfortunately, that's what they were subjected to. So, yeah, I knew what I was dealing with, and then I was afraid to leave for that reason, because
So
whilst I was around...
how did it end?
I'm
I'm
sorry?
curious. How did it end?
My leaving,
Yeah,
it
and your
was...
children, protecting your children. Has it reached a point where everything is fine, or
No,
is there still interference?
no, it's a strained and a frayed relationship, and my daughter has nothing to do with her father. My middle son has an ABI, an acquired brain injury from a fall from a car. So he's in a state of disrepair, I suppose you could say. His journey is different now. He does try, both boys have tried many, many times to connect with their father, because it's the same-sex role model, and they want it just as much as I wanted to have a father. They too wanted that connection, but sadly, their father has not been there for them at any level, financially, emotionally. It's still driven by, he wants to know about the mother. That's 23 years after the fact.
That's really unfortunate. I mean, don't you have any anger for the judicial system? The fact that they are still putting your kids through all of that?
So that's the past. That was then. That was they're now adults. That was then. I was very angry, and I confronted one of the specialists who wrote a report about me because I confronted him, and that went against me. And had it not been for the support of my family, it would have tipped me over the edge. And my sanity, and I thank God for my family. I know a lot of people don't have that that family unit to support them. So had I not had my family there, Harleen, I don't know that I would have been as a sound mind as today.
So when you say family, who do you mean? Who's in your
My
family?
siblings and my mother, they They were my saving grace. If it wasn't for my mother's goodness and my siblings' support, I don't know how I would have coped, because I left the marriage and I was given $250 and the whole house was ransacked when I left him there in good faith in the house, because I felt sorry for him. So nothing in return.
Yeah, but so many lessons here. So many lessons.
Absolutely. And so I was always in search, always looking for the answer, and the answers were there. It just took a lot of pain for me to walk away from that, unfortunately, and that is my message to anyone out there, and I try to set the example for my children. It is what it is. They are who they are. You have to love yourself enough and know that you're okay, and know that you don't have to rely on anyone, but it's about building self-confidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I totally second that thought, right? And I think that all begins with self-acceptance. Because when there is self-acceptance, there is self-love. And when there is self-love, there is a sense of confidence. And when there is a confidence, there is a belief in yourself that I am enough. I don't need to rely on external validation and external acceptance. I am enough to stand for what I believe in. And what I believe in is right for me. I am not answerable to anyone, right? Those are thoughts that are important, I think, for one's own personal growth. Obviously, everything has a balance. You cannot isolate any single thought and run with it, because then that would be off balance. But don't you agree?
I agree. So just on that point, Harleem, my mother told me I was worthy and I had everything. I was told everything that I needed to hear. I was given that support. But the thing is, so I went forth and lived out in the world of that. But it's the wounded child. You can believe all that you want, but unless you've dealt with that wounded child that still keeps telling us, that little child, you're still not good enough. You really weren't good enough because of and you don't realise that is it's like a tape recording that just goes over and over, and then it comes out. So we're given an opportunity, but it's whether we see the warning signs, and it's whether we want to face our demons. And it's a case of educating ourselves and getting to the core. Okay, if there is unfinished business there with a parent or whatever it is, deal with it, because it will come back to haunt you.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, it's funny that you should mention that, because last week I just made a YouTube video that exactly speaks about that, right? That you got to deal with the wounds, the scars, the insecurities. Unfortunately, what the world today is doing is we focus so much on the positive. We feel that, oh no, run forward. Focus on affirmations, focus on filling your cup more. But we forget when the cup is already full with pain, full with trash, full with garbage, full with wounds and scars, doesn't matter what you put on top of it. If the foundation is not clear, if the insides are not healthy, the outsides are going to rot, which is exactly what you just said.
Correct.
Right? You got to deal with the wound. It doesn't matter how you bandage it.
Eventually it will surface. Eventually
100%.
surfaces. The people either go into an abusive relationship the same. So they say, Harleem, why is it that you get two children in the same family? One decides to follow in the footsteps of their family, and the other one decides, no, this is not going to happen. Well, that's like playing Russian roulette. You just don't know which way it's going to go. But either way, you either suppress it by being in denial, and then you suppress it by medication or alcohol or sex or whatever you want to call it, but it will always come to the surface eventually, and you're never really fulfilled in yourself. So yes, I agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, I that example was good. Russian roulette indeed. So talk to me about how you overcame this journey. That's the important part.
Yes. So I realized that I had to take responsibility for who I was and how I got myself into that situation and what was my contribution to the failure of my marriage, because it takes two, irrespective. Somebody's, you drop the ball on both sides. So I always went to church and I always read books and I always wanted to find out what was going on with the human psyche and to try and understand myself and to make a better life for my children. So that didn't work. So I continued the path. And as they say, Harling, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. I was speaking to a friend. They said, look, I know that you're on a journey and I've done this course and I think you should go into it. And I said, look, thank you very much. I've done this, I've done that, I've read that, and I don't have any money. And they said, we believe in this. I believe in this course so much. He said, I will pay for the course up front. You pay me back $1 every year. I thought I had nothing to lose and I promised myself that I would not make that same mistake again. So I entered into transformational education. And for all the years that I've been going to counselling, I think, I wouldn't say that this is the holy grail, but it worked for me because I think you have to crash and burn before you're ready to listen once and for all. So I got the 4B2 in the head, enough pain, and I thought, no, I have to listen. I'm going to try whatever it's going to take. I will turn this around for my children and for myself, obviously. So I went and I did this course and I ended up signing up for the entire curriculum. Money was coming through the door, my life was changing, and I had a new realm of possibility for myself. I faced my fear and I had a vision. And I think that's probably what kept me going through the entire marriage. I had a vision. I knew that I was worthy and I was deserving of more than that. So I went on a course. Yeah, that was my journey. And my life started to change. Things started to change around me. And then my life had changed so much, my clients would get off the table and say, well, I hope that you're getting a compensation from this company because we're signing up. So I was on fire and happy because I could see that my world was changing around me. So it's the same thing, Harling. When you start to change, that's when your world changes around you. You are a magnet to whatever's going on. So if something's not working for your life, then you have to take stock and really do some deep thinking and educate yourself. Education is primary in this regard, because you get a degree for whatever it is that you do out there, but the most important vocation in life is relationships. And if you're not right, nothing else will work from there. So I trained myself thoroughly.
Superb,
Yeah.
superb. So a lot of takeaways there, right? The first takeaway was that obviously relationships are important and you have to educate. Education doesn't necessarily mean getting a degree. So don't measure education with the amount of degrees that you have and the learn. It is all about the learning, right? It's about reaching out and seeing where you're lacking, building that self-awareness in yourself, and allowing that self-awareness to guide you and bridge the gaps that you have within yourself. Because eventually there is a leakage inside of our thought process. You have to plug the holes. But then how do you plug the holes when you don't know where the holes exist? And how do you realize where the holes exist? It is via conversation. We are finding those right resources. Like in your case, you said, when you were ready, the universe gave to you. So being ready is key. And the statement that I said, right, the desire to change has to be so great that the universe listens and it presents to you the right opportunity. But also it means choosing the right opportunity, right? Very often I have found what people do is they get confused with the advice that is coming their way, right? And they end up following the wrong advice because everyone gives advice based on their experiences of life. So I think it's important also to understand where you want to be educated, where the real learning lies, versus just following the herd and doing something because you feel that it might actually impact you versus it actually changing what you're going through. Do you understand the difference?
Yeah, it's relative. It's relative. I can't account for anyone else, Harleen. I can only say that we can't say to somebody, I understand what you're going through. I get what you're going through, unless you've actually walked in those shoes. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, so that is my journey. Where it takes me, I don't know. But one of my pain points was regret. And that was the turning point for me also. First of all, it was pain, and then it was regret that changed my trajectory. Yeah, it's a broad subject. It's very individual. And yes, you do have to be careful who you listen to. One thing that I have learned is over my years of visiting certain therapists, that one thing I failed to ask them is, what was their life like? What did they make life mean? Because I feel that sometimes we have to interview the person who's actually going to be guiding us, because we have to make certain that, well, there's no certainties in life, but if you listen to what they say, then then you can ascertain, well, is this person going to help me, or are they still going to be operating from a place of hurt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. One is hurt, second is also assumption, right? Like you said, helping someone is all about helping them in their contexts. It's not about giving them information or giving them advice based on what you know, because what you know is not necessarily what they are going through. What they are going through is I mean, you can only understand that if you try and walk in their shoes. And you said that yourself too. So a real therapist really is someone who gets down and dirty and tries and understand your context, your pain, and then tries and really lift you up. But then I'm sure you've done that, which is why you have surfaced and you've done so well. You probably found that.
Thank you. I have. Yeah, that's why I've written the book, and my niche is specifically to women of low self-esteem and have been through domestic violence. And again, there are different levels of domestic violence. Some have been terribly brutalised. That's not my area. But I have written the book because it's one of the regrets that I needed to. Well, it was actually my partner. He was the reason for it. He thought that I had a story to tell. And I had never... I changed my language from I can't to I can. And I'm turning 60, yeah, so because I'm turning 65 this year, I'm thinking, you know, I still have something in me that I want to give, and I will not. But you know, what the heck? I'm here.
Super, wonderful. And I'm so glad that you came forward to talk about your story, because not everyone is candid about that. Not everyone is forthcoming about that. So I truly appreciate you talking about it, sharing with us not just your story, but also your emotions. The story was heartfelt. And I'm sure when we talk about it, we can open the floodgate, because there is so much more to talk about and so much, pain and recalled memories and repressed memories that are out there. But that's for another time.
If I can say quickly, in sharing, it's not about woe is me and I want the world to know what I went through. Everyone's been through stuff. I found that in sharing with women, it allows them to be honest rather than sitting in a place of shame. And this is what I did. I lived in that shame that this shouldn't happen. And I had the outward appearance that everything was good and fine. But when you scratch beneath the surface, you realize behind that facade there is pain there in everyone's life, and it allows them, by speaking candidly about your own life, it gives them permission to be themselves and to say, you know what, I am okay. Everyone does have their stuff, everyone's going through stuff, but I'm still okay. And that is the place that I come from, to empower women, that you are okay just the way you are. If you've got stuff going on in life, then you can work through that, and you don't have to live in shame.
Superb. Superb. And I think that's the biggest takeaway. Don't live in shame, right? It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to go through stuff, but talk about it. Don't hide. Don't deny yourself. That's the important thing, right? Many people.
Don't think that anyone, so my mother, her pearls of wisdom, she always used to say, and excuse me using this now, she used to say, Susie, everyone sits on the toilet the same. She said, don't be arrogant, but don't think that anyone's better than you at the same time, but always have that humility about you. So again, it's that being able to say, you know what, I don't have to hide in shame. I don't have to feel that that other person's any better than me, because that other person has their inadequacy or their pain themselves, looking at the other person thinking, I've got it better than I have. That's a fallacy. That's not true.
I agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. And if that is one lesson that all of us can actually take away from this, I think we will all benefit in life, because it creates a balanced feel for all of us. That is only empowering as we move forward.
Correct.
And mutually empowering, right? It's not empowering for me or you. It's mutually empowering. So why not? Yeah.
So, well, that's we give, we receive. And it's about, when you make a difference to someone, you're not just doing, you come away because you know if you can make a difference. We're on this earth to make a difference. None of us are an accident. We have a purpose in this life. And if we can realize how precious life is, it is a gift, and it's not to be used and disregarded. But again, that comes with education as well, Harleen, to realize and to empower our children and say, you know, you are a work of God, and you are here for a purpose, and you're here for a reason. And everyone has a place, no matter who they are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. Concur wholeheartedly.
Yeah, my book is coming out soon. It's called You Can Handle This, How to Overcome Grief and Adversity, Release the Fear, and Know That You're Enough. It's a message of resilience. So for anyone listening out there, I want to... Pardon?
Yeah. So you know what you should do? You should actually post the cover and the name of the book in the comment, so that people look at it, so that they can look out for the book once it is published, right? And once it is published, maybe even post it on your stories and tag us, so that our audience that does tune in later on knows that, hey, the book is out, and they know from where to pick the book and where to learn the lessons from.
That would be great.
All right. Thank you so much. It's been lovely talking to you. Not just the last hour, I think the last 3 hours, 2 hours, no more than 2, I'm sure. But it was wonderful. I think we saw different sides to each other, and I'm glad we did. I'm glad we connected. This was the universe making it happen.
Absolutely.
So, thank you.
It was a lesson in never give up, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely, right. Which completely aligns with your life lesson too. Never give up.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
When you got to get up and...
Absolutely.
You got
to make it happen.
Work. Yeah.
Harleen, thank you so much for having me on board. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you so much now. All right. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Bye.